Namo Ācāryapādāya Nitāya Kripāpradāya Gaurāgatha Dhamadāya Nagragramadāya Namo Vishnupadāya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swāmī Mahāraja Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharaya Nirushesha Chudhimani Pashatya Deshataya Amshakalpatrubhyasya Kripasantubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaः. Okay. Okay. Some of the things which I thought I should communicate. There are certain things which I generally communicate to our own God siblings, and then there have been certain thoughts which have greatly occupied my mind since the last 2 years or so about something else. Some specific instruction from Guru Maharaj, which he has been very vocal about, increasingly vocal about. So I'll bring up that also, specifically because he is involved in that. So I forget, I should also know that. Okay, I'll take it up one by one. Okay, the first thing that comes to my mind is it is a standard etiquette according to the Vedic scriptures that Vaishnava disciples should bring about the glory of their Vaishnava spiritual masters. It's something we know very well. We keep saying Ebeja Shubhushuk Tribhuvana. The Vaishnava disciple naturally wants to glorify his or her spiritual master throughout the 3 worlds. But that glorification has a superficial aspect in simply recounting his extraordinarily great spiritual attributes. That is one form of glorification. But there is also a deeper aspect, a deeper type of glorification of the spiritual master. And that is when we effectively carry out his instructions. Prabhupada often complained about Christians. They keep saying that they are followers of Lord Jesus Christ, but they are very expert in disobeying him. And ultimately, Prabhupada also said that the test of any bona fide religious system is that you progress and achieve love of God. And he referred to a standard text of evidence for this. Savaibum sam parodharmo yato bhaktir adhoksha jay ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. That form of religion is the highest paradharma, by which one will come to the point of ahaituki apratihata adhokshaja bhakti, and one will come to the point of rendering devotional service to the transcendent Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a manner that that devotional service is unmotivated and uninterrupted, unceasing and unmotivated, meaning that there's no motive other than to please Krishna. That's all. So everything is calculated in terms of that. Just as we go to a doctor not really to establish a very emotional relationship with him. That's okay, fine. You like the doctor likes you, fine. But that by itself is not the essence of it. It is being compliant to his instruction, his medical instructions, first of all. You go to a doctor for medical reasons. You're sick and you want to become free from that. So, same way, we know from Chaitanya Charitamrita that the spiritual master is also a doctor, sadhu vaidya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses this expression. The saintly authority, doctor, with the understanding that our anarthas, our unwanted propensities, activities, attitudes, desires, these are diseases. And that the saintly authority, the spiritual master, can cure us of these. So obedience has to be always considered to be a higher form of glorification, specifically in such a manner that we actually make spiritual progress. There is something called spiritual progress. The preaching of Krishna consciousness is not simply to introduce people to Krishna consciousness. That is not the idea. For instance, here, look at this. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that all over the world his message will be broadcast, does it mean that it will be simply a cinema show? Is it just some information transmission? We're just telling people, okay, there is no Krishna consciousness, that's all. No, he wanted that everyone should become perfect Vaishnava. Perfect Vaishnava means a Siddha Vaishnava. That means a Vaishnava who has attained sadhana siddhi, has attained the perfection of Krishna consciousness. We know of devotion and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that there is sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. Prema bhakti is perfection. So we talk about devotees, and then we talk about pure devotees, then we talk about perfect pure devotees. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is to bring us to the point of perfect pure Krishna consciousness. That is his purpose. It is not to make a farce, some lecturing hand, or some mutual praising society, a mutual praising society. I'm very fallen, Prabhu, but you're so great. And then you tell the same thing to me. I am very fallen, actually, but you're so great. And in that way, we are very comfortable with each other. That I glorify you, you glorify me. In one-on-one, or in a triangle, or in a quadrangle, or in a pentagon. And so we just group up together and we just keep praising each other, and we are living inside our own delusion, thinking that we are all going back to God and Hari Bo. When in fact we may not be making any spiritual progress at all. No. So in Krishna consciousness, there is this consideration of anarthas. Here is a list from Bhaktivinoda. I'll just very briefly bring it up just a little bit. Anarthas of the living entities enchanted by Maya are of four kinds: misconceptions about reality, inappropriate desires, offenses, and weaknesses of heart. Misconceptions about reality could be regarding the nature of the jiva, or the nature of the Supreme Lord, the nature of the goal of spiritual life, the means of spiritual life, and the nature of obstacles to spiritual progress. Inappropriate desires could be desires for material pleasures that can be attained in this life, material pleasures that can only be attained in the next life through pious activities, mystic perfections, mystic powers, or desires for any one or more of the five kinds of liberation. Offenses can refer to offenses to Krishna's holy name, his deity form, to his devotees, and there is something called Jayapataka. Krishna does not actually like when I offend any of Krishna's servants, because they also Krishna's children. Weaknesses of heart, attachment for the insignificant, hypocrisy or deceit, envy, and desire for prestige or position. So these are recognized as diseases, spiritual diseases. So our progress in Krishna consciousness will have to be measured objectively. This is not through subjective imagination. Objectively, which anyone can understand. Just like whether I have fever or not, anybody can understand. It is not just that, I don't like you, so I claim that you have fever. It's not like that. It is subject to independent verification. Similarly, whether or not I have anarthas, or whether my anarthas are increasing in intensity or decreasing in intensity, whether they are vanishing or whether they are intensifying, all of this, just if you just scrutinize a little bit, you'll easily understand it. So these are all things which we should, when I say we, I'm first of all saying myself and others also, I'm including all of us, because we can bring about a good name to our spiritual master. We can also bring about a bad name to our spiritual master. It is one thing that we, within our own group, keep saying Jai Guru Maharaj, Jai Guru Deva, etc., etc., etc. Another thing, to act in such a way and progress in Krishna consciousness. And then naturally, intelligent people will wonder on what basis is this person progressing in consciousness. Now, if you carefully examine Guru Maharaj's own lectures, if you read the books that are being published by his own order and through systems that he himself has created, derived from his lectures, if you listen to them, you watch them, and so on, you will very clearly be able to note, practically in every lecture, at least one or more points dealing with one of the anarthas that Thakur had given in that list that I read out. His own expectations is regarding us is very clear, abundantly clear. He expects us to progress. He expects us to progress from Kanishta Vaishnava to Madhyama Vaishnava to very clear about it. In fact, over the last 2 years or so, becoming more and more clear about it. So that is just something to ourselves about. Shastric education is something that Guru Maharaj has been talking about practically in every class. And in fact, not just in a class. So any venue that he gets to communicate, he's bringing this out. In his Vyasa Puja offering to Prabhupada, he's bringing it up. In his talks to disciples, he's bringing it up. In his conversation with his GBC colleagues, he's bringing it up. Everywhere he's bringing it up. You can ask his own servants, personal servants also. Or if you get a chance, if you're male body, then you get a chance to do some personal service to Guru Maharaj for, let us say, regularly for a period of 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month. You can yourself see. You'll hear with your own ears, you'll hear. Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. 4 mantras are coming out of his mouth. Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Previously, he used to talk about Bhakti Shastri being desirable. It would be nice. Then at one point he said, I think it is very important. Now he is saying it is essential. And actually now he is not even saying that. He is saying Bhakti Shastri is the first essential. And then there has to be a second essential, Bhakti Vaibhav. And then Bhakti Vedanta is a third essential. And Bhakti Sarvabhauma is up to Bhakti Sarvabhauma. You know what that is? That is, if you examine Prabhupada's own statements about this, this is something, it is, I don't know, it is like an outburst of Yogamaic Guru Maharaj is so forcefully talking. Even others, those who are not Guru Maharaj's disciples, are sensing it that Śrīla Jayapataka Swāmī Mahāraja very forcefully pushing this. Because we hear it in Māyāpur everywhere, every time. Get to hear it. So, I will take this opportunity to bring this up. First of all, there are a few letters from Prabhupada that I don't think I'll need to read everything in detail because you would have heard much about it, but a few things I will have to point out. There is a reason why I'm pointing it out. He has instructed me to do whatever is needed to get all of his disciples who are, I think, the first place we only take up those who are interested, saying that please let us all get all of my disciples first of all, and the devotees in my GBC zone. I want all of them to go through these. And it is not just the exam portion or getting a certificate. He's got some other additional points to bring up. Okay, now we know that there are 4 levels. Prabhupada has been talking about it from 1969. Actually, he conceived of the idea of Bhakti Shastri even before. All of this has a background. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a curriculum, a very deep curriculum, which in Mayapur Institute we are trying to implement. So Prabhupada used that as a basis to come up with 4 levels. Initially, he spoke about 3 levels: Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta. And then he added Bhakti Sarvabhauma. At each point you can examine and you can see that he was talking about using the books that he already had. For instance, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This was at a time when Chaitanya Charitamrita was not yet released. Nectar of Devotion. He had a plan to bring in Vedanta Sutra. Actually, next year we are beginning a course on Vedanta Sutra at Mayapur Institute, Foundations of Gaudiya Vaishnava Vedanta. This is more of a formalized version from 1976. This is what he means by these 4 levels. Prabhupada's version. Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Ishopanishad, Easy Journey to Other Planets, and all other small paperbacks, as well as a book to be compiled on the basis of Hari Bhakti Vilas on deity worship. At Mayapur Institute, they are thinking of integrating Bhakti Shastri with at least home deity worship. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is we also know that Prabhupada wanted every Iskcon center to have its own scheme of education. And obviously, its own scheme of education has to be in line with Prabhupada's own curriculum. So it is also expected that every Iskcon center will have to have its own mechanism under the authority set up by Iskcon's leadership. There is a Ministry of Education, and there is a Board of Examination. And there is a way by which Iskcon centers can directly conduct these 4 levels of examination. There are certain very clear prerequisites which need to be fulfilled. You need to have an education team which thinks about all this and make sure it happens. So that is something also that Guru Maharaj personally told me, that contact my various centers and see what can be done, by which this can happen. Introduce the survey, find out how many of my disciples have done what level, what is their plan to move forward, and so on. In Bhakti Vaibhav, the primary area of study is the first 6 cantos, first half of Bhagavatam, Bhakti Vedanta, the second half of Bhagavatam, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. In Prabhupada's version of it, notice that it is a bit more than what is currently going on inside Iskcon. Prabhupada has the full Nectar of Devotion, if you noticed it, not only part 1. He also has small paperbacks. He also has a bit of deity worship training. And for Bhakti Vaibhav, note this. At Bhakti Vaibhav level, they will have to be retested with Bhakti Shastri content. Bhakti Vedanta level, they will have to be retested. Bhakti Sarvabhauma level will have to be retested. So this is also developing as a trend with Iskcon. Gradually, there are devotees who are beginning to think about this. How at Bhakti Vaibhav level we can retest the students for Bhakti Shastra. Okay. Another point, Prabhupada is also linking up these with particular levels of, you can say, spiritual advancement. Bhakti Shastri for Brahmanas, Bhakti Vaibhav for Sannyasi, Bhakti Vedanta for spiritual masters. In other words, ideal Vaishnavas. So that is another dimension that has to be taken into consideration. All our Brahmanas, anyone wanting to become Brahmana will have to sit for examination once a year at Mayapur. Prabhupada envisioned these four as simply examinations. But as we will see, Prabhupada did not have any issue with having a course. Prabhupada liked it also. You can have a course also. It is also fine. Keep this in mind. The Brahmana will be expected to pass the Bhakti Shastri exam, but there are other features of a Brahmana that are also within Prabhupada's purview. Cleanliness, being exemplary, reading the books. Brahmana should be a Pandita. Different things. How he has molded his life. All of these are essential. And he says that if you are well trained, you will find the questions so easy. It will not be difficult. Prabhupada also wanted Brahma Samhita to be added. Notice this. For Bhakti Shastri, he is even willing to consider this for non-devotees. As of now, within Iskcon, we have board of examination rules that the candidates will need to chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles in order to pass the exam and get a Bhakti Shastri certificate. But Prabhupada also considered keeping it out. And I'm developing the thought process that we should petition the GBC to open it up for everyone. Everyone should do. Just because Iskcon Brahmanas are meant to do Bhakti Shastri doesn't mean that only Iskcon Brahmanas should do Bhakti Shastri. Everybody should do. But Iskcon Brahmanas, for them it is necessary or recommended, highly recommended. Not, I can't even say recommended, compulsory. I have to say recommended. Regarding the examinations, the idea is that anyone after studying the books who wants to gain the title of, they can take the exam. This is academic. It's like a Brahmana with Shastric knowledge and a Brahmana without. It is optional. One who wants may take it. The real purpose is that our men should not be neglectful of the philosophy. The examinations will begin on Gaur Purnima. This is another thing to note. Sometimes our devotees, they have the misconception that these examinations should not interfere with festivals. But they don't understand. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had his examinations for his students. And his examinations would run for 6 hours, 8 hours. And he had the exam conducted in Mayapur, specifically on Gaur Purnima day. He said, this is how you serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada also had the first Bhakti Shastri exam conducted on Janmashtami day. This is bhakti. This is not, it is smaranam. Smarana bhakti. So it is best if it is done in a holy place. If you're doing it in a center like, if you're doing it in a place like Bangalore or somewhere. If possible, do it inside the temple. In fact, in front of the deities, sit them and make them do the exam. This is direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On a holy day, if possible. If you say Bhakti Shastri has several exams, which you know, how do we make, how do we get it done? So then within Iskcon Bhakti Shastri, we have 5 units. So there are 5 exams. At least one of them, you put it on some holy day. There are so many holy days. Do it on some holy day. Examination is in class. Either it is compulsory. So to pass the examination means one must have knowledge. There are higher intelligent class of disciples. Otherwise, it is not compulsory. So how to organize it, how to do it, you have given the idea. Now how to do it is up to the GBC. We pushed it, and after so many years, it has become a reality. And there are various spiritual masters. It is not just our Guru Maharaj. Whatever may be the differences between our spiritual authorities, practically speaking, they are all united in this thing. That Prabhupada's book should be studied by Iskcon devotees. Prabhupada's book should be systematically studied by Iskcon devotees. Prabhupada's book should be systematically studied by Iskcon devotees through Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarva. This much is not in dispute at all. And Guru Maharaj has given a special push to this. Historically, Guru Maharaj has been one of the most influential leaders of Iskcon. It is a simple fact. It's a simple fact. He has been talking about congregational expansion from mid-80s. And Guru Maharaj is a very patient leader, a very mature, patient leader. He understands how much time Iskcon takes to understand certain things, and very patiently he pushes it through. Year after year. Same thing. You'll say it in different ways to different devotees in order to make sure it happens. He began talking about congregational expansion from the 80s. And it actually began to fructify from mid-90s. And in today's Iskcon, basically the congregation. So at that time he had this idea that everybody will not live in a temple. Everybody will not live in a temple. We could not even imagine that at that time. I don't know if you can understand, but oldies like me, we could not imagine that kind of Iskcon. But Guru Maharaj could. And some of his brothers were making fun of him. Jayapataka, he always has some queer idea. He said, no, I'm talking something which is very sensible. And he had to convince some of his GBC colleagues. He had to convince them. I remember there was one GBC member who was very fond of distribution. So he told Jayapataka Swāmī, this is how he is. I'm simply repeating, no offense. Jayapataka Swāmī, see, you like congregational development. I like book distribution. So you can tell all these things to your disciples. They are just brainwashed, so they'll listen to you. You don't disturb whole Iskcon, imposing your ideas on whole Iskcon. Then Guru Maharaj said, no, it's not like that. I'm simply saying what Prabhupada has said. My disciples may listen to me. That's a different issue. But I'm talking of whole Iskcon. I'm talking as a governing body commissioner, as a servant of the GBC body, as a servant of Iskcon. I'm saying congregational development is got nothing to do with these people being my disciples or not my disciples, because I'm talking of certain standard reality. Standard reality being that the vast majority will be staying outside. And we need to think about how to help them making spiritual progress. During the time period that I'm talking of, those who were staying outside the temple were either non-devotees with capital N or non-devotees with small n. Or they were simply a puzzle. We just didn't know what they were. Because a devotee is one who gives up everything, lives in a temple. So these are not that. What is this species? We did not know. And then Guru Maharaj used to say they are devotees. They are congregational devotees. And at one point they will accept. Scroll forward. It is now axiomatic truth that this is normalcy. And then those who, on top of it, they give up, they go and stay in the dham and they completely surrender themselves for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, whether they are brahmachari, grihastha, vanapasta, sannyasi, these are considered extraordinary devotees. It's become reality. The same way, you look at Guru Maharaj's drive that everyone should go through Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Before we begin to ridicule this idea, also consider that it can become a reality. Along with acceptance that there are various dimensions to spiritual education. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke about 3 dimensions. There is the Vichar aspect, there is the Ācār aspect, there is the Prachar aspect. There is, first of all, a clear understanding of Krishna consciousness. This is called Vichar. This is the foundation. If you don't understand, if you have defective Vichar, defective understanding, then you will have defective Ācār, defective implementation of it. And then your spreading, sharing, there's no use in spreading some defective version of Krishna consciousness. So Shuddha Vichar will lead to Shuddha Ācār, which will lead to Shuddha Prachār. So it is not just Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, just studying and getting some degrees. At a level, there is also a certain stage of Vichar, Ācār, Prachār. Another way of looking at it. We know from Chaitanya Charitamrita that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings have been classified under 3 headings. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shicharthameka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripadir Yastam Padye. There is the aspect of Vichar, Vairagya, Vidya and Bhakti. Vairagya referring to internal and external realization. Vidya referring to theoretical knowledge of the scriptures, intellectual understanding of scriptures, and spiritual realization of the scriptures. Bhakti referring to the activities of devotional service and the attitudes that comprise devotional service. So, when you examine Prabhupada's own instructions, it's understood that we are meant to increase in our Vairagya Vidya Bhakti and Bhakti Shastri, and then increase it further at Bhakti Vaibhav, increase it further at Bhakti Vedanta, increase it further at Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Very, very important to keep in mind. In fact, for under JP, his disciples and for his own zone, Guru Maharaj wants to create a section of his JPS secretariat. Wants to create a system. He wants a group of devotees who take up the hard work of doing periodical surveys. He has instructed to right now deal with. So one thing that I'm planning to do is create a team, and then also thinking in terms of different language sections, maybe different regions, because there has to be some way to deal with it. So I might be contacting some of you to induct you into a team, and we'll have to periodically meet with Guru Maharaj, present him reports. This is a serious matter, and we ourselves will be needing to. We would need to study further. Otherwise, Guru Maharaj will simply You haven't seen Guru Maharaj when he's angry. We should not see him angry. But it is something important. These are all important. Okay. One more last thing. I will end this discussion with some readings, a little bit of reading from Guru Maharaj's manuscript of his book on Prabhupada. Suppose it will be printed by the BBT, published by the BBT. It's going through the process. It's just a manuscript. Still, many more things need to be done in order to be standard. Until they feel fully satisfied, then it will be printed. But there is one section in the book which deals with various anecdotes. One part of the book is all his chronological memories. That's the first part of the book. The second part of the book is different memories, anecdotal, arranged by themes. Guru Maharaj wanted it like that. So there's one section on Prabhupada's books. So I thought I would read at least a few from that. In the beginning, Śrīla Prabhupāda would provide his book translations in audio format. The editor somehow didn't stay true to the translation of Prabhupada, or maybe they just didn't understand what he had said. Prabhupada may have said one thing and they wrote something else. So the editors thought, if they see some contradiction, we should write what Prabhupada said. So that seemed reasonable. Once I saw Śrīla Prabhupada sitting down and listening to one of his own tapes. When he saw that I was observing him, he said, "It's Krishna speaking through me. Even to hear again is no harm." Prabhupada would even say to different disciples, "You speak," and he would listen. In Vrindavan, Krishna had a disciple speak Srimad Bhagavatam and had him sit almost as high as he was. He might even be higher, but he assured us that the Bhagavatam was always higher than the speaker. The Bhagavatam was in a raised position. To read it, the disciple was sitting almost as high as Śrīla Prabhupada. People put the Bhagavatam on the altar and they perform regular puja and arati to it instead of a deity. These books are actually incarnations of God in book form. We always place these books a little higher than the speaker's sitting place out of respect. It's by hearing the words that are recorded in these transcendental literatures that the consciousness is purified. This is about how we did Sankirtan in West Bengal, India when Prabhupada was present. Since Śrīla Prabhupada encouraged us to distribute his books and hold festivals, we had a group of 15 or 16 devotees and 3 Sankirtan persons. We had very few books then. So we had to give everyone a choice between Prabhupada's Gita and Bengali poetry or some other small books. Gradually, the collection of books increased. So when we would come to a town, all the devotees would go out with their book bags. A couple of devotees would take the Sankirtan buses and strategically place them so that they could distribute maximum books. Soon I learned that we had to have a place to stay and learn to utilize the Indian etiquette of serving guests to our system. I would ask around for the most pious persons in the city, such as those interested in 24-hour Kirtan Yajna and those who are known to sponsor digital programs. I would approach such people, not for any favors, but to simply seek information. I explained that the Sankirtan devotees who needed one night's accommodation, and if they knew anyone who could help us. Their attitude was, Atithi Narayan. The guest is like Narayan. 80% of the time they would say, no, you must stay with us. Rarely would I have to go to the second person on the list. Once, while securing a place for the Sankirtan devotees to stay, the cooks, while securing a place for the Sankirtan devotees to stay, the cooks would compile a list of what we needed. With the list in hand, I would ask the sponsoring householder, where is the market? Where can I buy these goods? The last thing they would want would be for their guests to do their own shopping. They would kindly insist on purchasing the supplies of rice, dal, and sabji. We would cook and offer the bhoga to the deities, and when the devotees came back, they had a hot meal ready. We then served the householders hot prasad. We were their guests, but we gave them dinner, and the devotees would also have kirtan. Our hosts would be very happy. After all the activity of the day, the hard-working Sankirtan devotees would finally take rest while a class played on a tape recorder in the background. That's how it would go every day. Out on Sankirtan, we had to exercise caution on where we parked. If we blocked a shop that had open access to the street, the shopkeeper would get angry with us for talking his custom. There was a devotee on the team called Tatpar Swami. Tatpar Swami was after he received sannyas, who later took sannyas. He had a way of saying the craziest things, screaming at the top of his lungs. He would shout, 60 drops of blood, 60 drops of blood. People would gather. What's that? What's that? Then Tatpar would give a class and distribute books. Sometimes there was such a demand that people would line up at the window of the Sankirtan vehicle to obtain books. It's not so easy now. As Prabhupada said, there is dancing white elephants. Curious came to see what the foreigners were doing. We were distributing many books in this book. The Calcutta State Government Office had published with maps of each district and the village markets and what days of the week they would open. The maps indicated by the circles how big the village markets were. Another department advertised details about when community festivals were held. So we used all of those tools to help us distribute Śrīla books. I don't know if the Sankirtan parties use these devices anymore. They were the cutting edge of our planning tools at the time. These map books were not for the public, but somehow or other we managed to get them. At the time of writing, we now have 10 Sankirtan parties. A few popular is in Mayapur. A few popular Sankirtan tables of happen. So that's going on. Śrīla Prabhupāda said that ultimately the projects are for book distribution. But at the present time, due to the poor situation in India, book distribution is a big struggle. People don't have so much money. We're racking our brains for ways and means. Because some people think that, well, what is the relationship between this Mayapur Indian project and between book distribution? Prabhupada had no such qualms. There was no thing where he put his priorities. Prabhupada traveled around the world and encouraged each zone in different ways. But we were never confused about book distribution being the most important project in Iskcon. That was because Prabhupada wouldn't allow to have that confusion. Everything must be guided according to sadhu shastra, keeping the shastra in the forefront. This is the basic system. Therefore, as soon as Śrīla Prabhupada came, he immediately started to translate shastra. Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ishopanishad, Nectar of Devotion. Books are the basis. Prabhupada was so happy to see his books printed and distributed. I saw him literally one day. He was so happy that the Brihad Mridanga was being played. As I described earlier in this book, I used to take out the book distribution party. One of the book distributors became Bhaktichar and another became Tatpar Maharaj. There were many other enthusiastic and sincere devotees traveling on the Sankirtan party. We were totally dependent on Krishna to distribute Śrīla Prabhupada's books. It was a special phase. Of course, from the day I was a new bhakta in the temple, Śrīla Prabhupada had us distributing books. At that time, though, there were not many BBT books unlike today. At that time, there was only Back to God, the Bhagavad Gita, and a few small books for us to distribute. Even then, Prabhupada told us that we should distribute 10,000 big books every month and 100,000 small books every month. Śrīla Prabhupada's books. Okay. Who are we? How did we come to this world? Is there life after death? What is that life? What is this material world? How does it relate to God and man? All these things are very scientifically and systematically described in the Vedic literature. Śrīla Prabhupada's books are actually giving this knowledge to people. Unfortunately, people are so absorbed in the external knowledge. That is, the knowledge from Prabhupada's books is a little different from what they are accustomed to. They tend to reject or doubt it without giving it a fair hearing. We want to do what is pleasing for Shachi Sutta. Whatever is pleasing to Lord Chaitanya, whatever is displeasing to Lord Chaitanya, we have to reject. How do we know what Lord Chaitanya wanted? The Prabhupada has instructed us about Mahaprabhu's desires over the next 10,000 years. This Iskcon movement is going to take up the teachings of Śrīla Prabhupada so that we can grow. Thus, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted us to act so that he will be pleased. Śrīla Prabhupada wrote all these books so that all of us would read them. He didn't want that we just distribute the books and not read them like a mundane book salesperson does. What does this book say? We shouldn't say, I don't know, I just sell them. He didn't want that. You should read them and you should promote them. Oh, this book is great. This is about the spirit soul and the supreme personality of Godhead, reincarnation, karma. A very interesting book. Buy a Bhagavad Gita as it is. Take it home with you. Read it again and again. You'll like it. Śrīla Prabhupada wanted his followers to read and study his books. To get first initiation, I had to read the Bhagavad Gita 10 times. Now I ask the devotees to read Bhagavad Gita 2 times and they say, Gurudev, 2 times. It's too hard. I have to go shopping. I have to answer my Facebook messages. I have to put color on my nails. I have so many important things to do. I have a final exam coming up in 2 years. I have no time to read. That's why we now have the audio Bhagavad Gita so that you can play it in your home, in your car and listen to the Gita and the purports. But we should read the Bhagavad Gita and all the other books written by Prabhupada. These are very essential for our spiritual progress. We should also distribute them to others. We know that Śrīla Prabhupada's prime objective was to print and distribute his books. The backbone of our book distribution is a Sankirtan. It is an inspiration to see how the devotees are tirelessly distributing these books. Circumstances, the book distribution goes on. We are also very inspired by how the book distributors have taken up Bhakti Shastri and other study courses. So they know what Śrīla Prabhupada's books contain and they can explain them adequately. Actually, the Māyāpur Institute is going beyond Iskcon's core Bhakti Shastri books. It is now working out courses on Prabhupada books, basically all the books, including books of published by the VPP after Prabhupada's departure, like Science of Self-Realization, Quest for Enlightenment, Journey of Self-Discovery, Kunti Maharani's teachings of Queen Kunti, teachings of Lord Kapila, and small books put together. All of this is important. We need to have devotees who are well educated. I personally am of the consistent opinion that before chooses a guru inside Iskcon, he should have read all of Prabhupada's books once. Just translation purpose of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Instruction. I'm not saying they should read the shlokas, synonyms, summaries, and so on, and the other books. Just read it through. At least you have a basic general idea of what's going on. Not that you get into all these things much later, and after 20 years you have some very fundamental confusion, basic confusion. These things should have been worked out much ahead. And in fact, I would say for the first reading, you don't need to follow any particular order. Read them in any order. First reading, just read it out. Then second reading onwards, then you can read them very carefully. Prabhupada also distinguished between reading and studying. For studying, Prabhupada wanted courses like Bhakti Shastri. Recently, there was a quote which from Prabhupada that has been circulated, in which Prabhupada said that he wanted in the temples that there should be at least 5 hours of classes per day. Just like in a regular school, there are classes for 6 hours, 7 hours. Like that, Prabhupada wanted that also. We should somehow figure out how to make it possible for the congregational devotees also to be able to attend classes at their convenience. Maybe they will not be able to attend 6 hours of classes per day, but maybe they can attend 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in night. It's possible. For some, even that is not possible. For some, we need to have batches with only 90 minutes of classes per day during weekdays. For some others, you need to have classes in the weekend. For some, you may need to just have some classes on Sunday. Anyway, it is our duty to ensure that we study and help others also study and carry out the instructions that are found in the books. All right, so I'll stop with that. Any comments, any questions?
Hari Bol, Vidvān Gaurāṅga Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Sudhir Chaitanya Das speaking. Brahma Saukyam.
Anantam.
Nice to see you, hear from you. I remember one something that interacted with you and Guru Maharaj. I don't know whether you said it later. At one time Guru Maharaj was doing kirtan in the temple hall in Mayapur. And then he saw you coming up there and he started singing, Jai Vidvān Gaurāṅga, Jai Vidvān Gaurāṅga.
Like this, Guru Maharaj makes fun of it. He makes fun of it. Fun of all those who need to be made fun of.
Then you, it seems, you closed your ears saying, no, 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 Guru Maharaj, no, not my name, not my name.
Actually, when he initiated me, he said, it's your duty to establish that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are the highest teachings of Vedic knowledge. Guru Maharaj also thinks about purpose for which he has to be used. That's all to the Vaishnava community.
Your Ramayana has come out nicely. I just going through some things.
More books I'm working on. Actually, on 4 books for Mayapur Institute. The Essence of Vedanta from Bhagavad Gita, Prayers by Personified Vedas, Govinda Bhashya in 4 volumes, and the Essence of the Principal Upanishads, with commentaries from Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, and so on. And Gaudiya. Because next year I'm having a course coming up. Those who have completed Bhakti Vaibhav, they can apply for it. If they have completed Bhakti Shastri, they will need to go through a special entrance exam. In any case, whether they've done Bhakti Vaibhav or Bhakti Shastri, after they have preliminary qualifications, then they'll need to come for an interview. Prabhupada wanted Vedanta Sutra to be studied. So MI is thinking about all this. Guru Maharaj very clearly told the Mayapur Institute that now that the GBC wants every Iskcon center to come up with the same courses, Mayapur Institute being, it needs to do what Prabhupada specifically wanted in Mayapur. Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Bhakti Vinod, they devised a whole complete curriculum based on previous acharyas' writings. So we need to bring all of that content in addition to the regular content. So he said, you people have to do even more hard work. They'll need to, those who are fixed up in Prabhupada's teachings, they will need to also understand the basis. Because the acharyas, deities are going to stop. So I told Guru Maharaj once, I said that, see, it is not enough to just worship the acharyas, deities with Pancharatrika mantras and gestures. It is also important to study their books and carry out their instructions. And Guru Maharaj said, yes, it's very important. In Mayapur, we are going to have the deities, so therefore we have to teach their books. Yes, a lot of interesting services.
And Prabhupada envisioned that he once, Guru Maharaj told this, that Prabhupada told him once, how many can you accommodate in the temple? You have to go out. So that's how this congregation came into existence, preaching. Otherwise, I think congregation had no shape and size in a temple's atmosphere before 80s, the 1980s, early 1990s also.
Yeah, there was always a struggle.
Who are they?
But I think that
even now in our meetings, sometimes I ask him, so what law is there unto a congregation devotee? Guru Maharaj waves his hand, nothing. They are nothing. Nothing applies to them.
One thought I always had, that if the temple residents, if they consider and follow the instructions that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave for temple resident life, and if our congregation devotees carry out Bhaktivinoda Thakur's instructions for congregational devotee life, they both will get the same result. And you can't say this is more difficult than that. Both are equally difficult in different ways.
Correct.
So, but I only become irritated when temple resident says that I don't want to, I'm not bothered about what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, or when congregation devotee says, I'm not bothered about Bhaktivinoda standard. So then you go nowhere.
Correct. I said once, this full-time devotee should not become like a full-time devotee.
Yeah, it becomes ridiculous now. It becomes ridiculous.
Sometimes the roles are reversal. A full-time devotee may not be...
So embarrassing. When the guru is becoming lower than the shishya. And an embarrassment to the shishya. Should rectify that.
Guru Maharaj did bring a revolution in congregation preaching. But it's just the case of a temple resident devotee to accept that. Sometimes it evolves into some kind of other picture.
One thing Guru Maharaj used to tell me, when he would become very much annoyed, he would say, you're expecting Iskcon to learn things very fast. You should understand Iskcon learns, but it learns slowly because it primarily depends on experience. It's not that just because Bhaktivinoda writes it here, Prabhupada writes it there, and Jiva Goswami writes it there, therefore we'll follow. No, it will not think like that. It will go through it will commit a mistake, and then again commit a mistake, again commit a mistake, again commit a mistake. And then you point out, see, it's already written. If you commit this mistake, you'll experience this consequence. Then they see, yes, that consequence is being experienced. Then after 10 years, 20 years, they will say, this is bad. So he said, we have to think in decades when dealing with Iskcon. They understand. We went from one extreme to another. Now, correct, gradually we begin to understand. Everything has its role to play. We do require temples. We do require temple residents also. There's a logic behind it. Otherwise, why would Prabhupada also knew Bhaktivinoda very well. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati himself knew Bhaktivinoda's teaching very well. Why did Bhaktivinoda even instruct Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to set up temples with all their complications? So there's a plan behind these great masters. It takes some time to develop that maturity to understand how everything fits in. I thought Mathura Leeleshwari Mataji wanted to ask a question.
Jai, thank you, Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you so much for sharing, Prabhu. I just had a question. It's so nice to see that, there's like really huge focus on learning the shāstras and everything. And it's so nice to hear it from you as well. And I just had this question thinking that, unfortunately, not all of us are, we don't have scholarly nature. Not everyone has that scholarly nature. And sometimes even after reading, we are not able to reproduce and present it attractively, be say in a lecture or in a seminar, because, of course, reproducing is a different skill set altogether. So how important is it, Prabhu, to have the ability to read and reproduce while practicing, of course, opposed to reading and understanding and practicing what's recommended in the shāstras? That means without being able to, give like a very attractive presentation by quoting the verses and whatnot. Thank you, Prabhu. Krishna.
See, one thing that you have brought up, how to make a persuasive presentation and so on, that is actually a different skill set. Those who are taking a basic Brahminical training, which would naturally come, which would need to come within the Bhakti Shastri scheme. That is our entry level. There, the Iskcon has to think about this. The local centers will have to think about this and try to help the devotees understand and train them in how to present things. Now, within Iskcon as of now, verbal presentation is only taken into consideration at the second level, Bhakti Vaibhav level. At Bhakti Shastri level, they are satisfied with written presentation. You write an essay. You know, we have this thing called open book assessment, closed book assessment, verse memorization assessment. So in the open assessment, it's basically project work. I personally, I have created something called Bhakti Shastri Assessment Training Workshop, 5 days. Because I noticed that a number of devotees, they cannot handle all these essays. Most of the devotees who are doing this are adults who have written essays maybe 20, 25 years back. They never did essays during this time. And they have not been taught systematically how to write an essay logically. You know, how do you bring in various evidence texts? How do you piece them together? How do you put them together rationally? You know, premise 1 plus premise 2 should lead to conclusion. You can't have something, for instance, you can't say, as a typical example, the parrot is green, the sky is blue, and therefore Krishna is Supreme Personality. There's no logic in this. Premise 1 is true, premise 2 is true, but premise 1 plus conclusion is also true. But premise 1 plus premise 2 does not equal conclusion. This is illogical. In the West also they consider illogical. East also they consider illogical. In India, we also have something called Nyaya. After learning Sanskrit grammar, the next thing that we trained in is Nyaya. It's the grammar of thought. Logic is the grammar of thought. You need to do things properly. You need to think properly. You can't come up with fallacious argumentation. These things are acknowledged even in the West. Brahmanas need to do that. Both male body and female body. Brahmanas will need to do that because Brahmana is meant for society. A person who has volunteered to become a guide to society needs that training. Just like when you become a teacher in a school for first grade, first standard, or second grade, second standard students, you will have to accept that I need to be trained in order to deal with the children. Because that role is there. Brahmana is itself entry level leadership level. Bhakti Vaibhav for sannyas. Sannyas is, there for the Brahmanas. And then an ideal Vaishnava is even a leader for the sannyasi. So you can understand that each one is having more and more of a demand, you can say. But Guru Maharaj's way of thinking was, these are things which we have discussed with him also many times. In general, Guru Maharaj's way of thinking was, a person has accomplished a particular level. Let us say here we are talking of education, or say first initiation. Then there is second initiation, which is above that. Don't just get them to jump into second initiation and then suffer at the time of examination, interview, this. Identify what exactly is required to move them from here to here. Help them come up. Help them come up. Yes, it involves some austerity. Yes, but that austerity is for the good of the entire movement. It's for the good of society. Certain skill sets can be acquired through training. We may all not be talented. For instance, writing is a talent, just as music is a talent. Everybody cannot be a musician, but some basic minimal training has to be there. Just like cooking is also a talent, but That doesn't mean that we all start saying, okay, cooking is a talent. I don't have the talent, so I will not cook at all. So similarly, we can't say that I will not write at all. I will not speak at all. I will not communicate at all. You may have exceptionally persuasive, well-reasoned, airtight logic-filled presentation. That's just, you may come across some genius who can do that. We don't expect that all of us, don't expect I should become a genius. I will not. By Hari Guru Vaishnava Kripa, I may be good at one thing and bad in many other things. So that's all. That's all. So let's just leave it at that. So some basic amount of training is required for systematic education. Systematic education is very important. In addition to non-systematic education. Non-systematic education is just inspirational, motivational education and pushing the devotees to read and so on. But systematic education has its own value. Let me see why systematic education is valued in Vedic culture. Let's see if I. Okay, here is, let me share my screen. So this is something that I wrote many years back. What is a commentary supposed to do? Now, there is actually meant to be a commentator on Shastra, verbal commentator. He's supposed to explain things. What is that teacher supposed to do? Ideally, he's supposed to the scriptural text. How does he do that? So here I'm quoting something from an ācārya named Śrī Māyāpur. He wrote in a book called Nyaya Sudha, which is a commentary on Madhvacharya's second commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Madhvacharya has, to his credit, 3 commentaries on Vedanta Sutra and 1 sum the Vedanta Sutra. So this appears in the second commentary called Anuvyakhyana. Spashtikaranam cha aneka vidham. Clarification is of several kinds. Kvachit anukta amshasya ukti. In some places, stating explicitly that which is implicit. Something may not be explicit, but you will have to make it explicit and explain, of course, why you have to make it explicit. Kwapi atisankshiptasya vistaranam. In some places, elaborating on that which is extremely compressed. Kvachit ativistrit taya buddhyanarudhasya sankshepaha. In some places, summarizing that which is too elaborate and hence unintelligible. Sometimes some subject matter may be discussed so long and you're not able to get. So what's the essence? What is the summary? So the commentary or the teacher will have to bring that out. Vapi vikshiptasya ekikaranam. Sometimes consolidating statements relevant to the topic at hand that have been scattered in many words and in several places. Kutrapi uktasya upapadanam. Sometimes to establish the validity of the text. Kvachit apavyakhyana nirdhikaranam. Sometimes to reinforce the teaching of the text by refuting misinterpretation. So, in systematic education, we deal with these kind of things. You read something in Bhagavatam, second canto, something, and you've heard somebody giving a class in Chaitanya Charitamrita on a similar point, but it seems to be different. Now, they'll naturally bring it up to the teacher. The teacher cannot, more accomplished teachers will handle all these questions. They will not reject these questions because these are in the minds of the devotees and their doubts have to be destroyed. It is one of the functions. Actually, it is one of the functions of those who take up the role of training others. So these are all things which need to be dealt with. We have sensual needs. Our body has needs. The body needs to sleep. The body needs to eat. The body needs to be healthy. We have emotional needs. These are all needs of the mind. We need to be loved. We need to be cared for. we need to be communicated with in a acceptable manner, and so on. These are all needs of the mind. Then the intelligence has its own need. Intelligence thinks in terms of reasoning. Why is this correct? Why is that not correct? And so on. Given premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, how do you come to this particular conclusion? So all that requires utilizing intelligence. So intelligence has its place. Because if you don't satisfy the body or the mind or the intelligence, whichever you are not satisfying will harass you later on. It will simply harass you. And you cannot satisfy the mind by providing something sensual. For instance, suppose my child, let us say I have a daughter, and my daughter does not talk to me. Some quarrel I had. That cannot, so now my mind is disturbed. My mind cannot be satisfied sensually. You cannot just give me a nice Mahaprasadam cake. Okay, so you eat this cake and then now your mind will be peaceful. No, my mind will not be peaceful just with the cake. The cake is important for some other reason. If I'm hungry and you give me food, okay, fine. That will deal with that. Similarly, contrarily, when I'm hungry and you just talk very sweet words and you talk so nicely, dadati, pratigranati, of everything other than bhumte bhojete, then again, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. My body needs to be dealt with. Similarly, intelligence is harassing me. No, but this point, why is it like this? Why these people are saying like this? Why they are saying like this? When your intelligence is harassing you, you cannot say, no, but all that he needs is now. Sab dil mein hota hai. Everything happens through the heart. It will not. It will not. Because the intelligence is separate from the mind. Satisfy one of them using the other. Similarly, the soul needs Krishna. The soul needs direct experience of God. And right from the beginning of Shuddha Bhakti, from Shraddha stage of Shuddha Bhakti, up to Prema stage of Shuddha Bhakti, everywhere you will find Bhakti, Pareshana Bhava, Viraktir Anyatracha. You will find direct experience of God. So in some manner. In Madhurya Kadambini, in last chapter, some details are there. So you get some basic idea about that. So the soul needs, so the soul has its need, the intelligence has its need, the mind has its need, the body has its need. You cannot neglect, you can't starve the intelligence. So it has its role to play. It is required. I will not say this will solve all the problems in existence. It will solve one problem. And it is one out of the 4 different typical problems that you can face. You can face spiritual problems, intellectual problems, emotional problems, sensual problems. All 4 need to be dealt with. Within the broad system of Shastra, Sadhu, Guru, it needs to be dealt with. So it has its role to play, and systematic education will help. Systematic education will help. There is also another factor. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyete kathita hyartha prakashanti mahatmanam. Very well. This is the last statement of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. It says that those who have parabhakti, which actually means transcendental devotion service to the Supreme Lord, and the same to a bona fide spiritual master. First of all, it identifies such a person as a Mahatma. Only a Mahatma, a great soul, will have parabhakti to the Supreme Lord and parabhakti to a bona fide spiritual master. And for such a person, all scriptural knowledge is revealed. But it's only for that person. It does not apply to those who are engaged in impure devotional service. It is for those who are engaged in pure devotional service. Even in Bhagavad Gita, we see, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Krishna says, and afterwards he says, Tesham eva anukampartha. Only for these people I give them mercy by enlightening them. Not for impure devotees. Chaturth Shloki in Bhagavad Gita deals with pure devotees. Buddha Bhava Samanvita. It's a pure devotee. That's a distinction between a devotee, pure devotee, and a perfect pure devotee. So if I'm engaged in pure devotional service to Hari Guru Vaishnava, then everything is revealed in my heart and I don't need to go through all this systematic education and so on. But if I'm not, then I should do all these things. Iskcon is also very much about how to make it easier for devotees, more and more, without compromising the standard. That's another thing. I want to very much promote it, but my position is without compromising the standards. I personally think that our attitude towards preaching should be like this, without the slightest dilution. If things are difficult, let it be difficult. Without trying to make it easier, we should be able to promote it. Just like, for instance, look at this computer company, Apple. You know, it sells its highly expensive, but they give, you know, they make advertisements which basically tell you that your whole life is a waste if you don't have an Apple product. But they'll never reduce the price. Never they'll reduce the price. Be like that. Present the stuff as it is, despite the complexity, difficulty, whatever you want, complaint you have, I'll accept all that. But that's what it is. And despite that, we should be able to effectively promote. It has happened, and it must happen. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
So
Anything else?
there are two more questions in the chat, Prabhuji. So if your time allows, if you wish, you can answer, Prabhuji.
We should close up in another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh,
whatever is comfortable.
there's
for
some kind of
Prabhuji. Yeah. So there are
the
two
chat
questions.
box. I totally forgot about chat box. Okay, right. Can you please comment on getting Bhakti Shastri from local temples versus MI or VIH? Should we prefer one over other if we have the options to choose? Then naturally prefer one over the other. Guru Maharaj is last month. This is last month. He said, somehow or other, I want these people to do. There is one, we are giving so many options now. That is something, if you're more than 40 years old, and if you have been a leader in the preaching mission of Iskcon, you can go for something called Bhakti Shastri summative examination, which is just a 4-hour examination. Question paper will be derived from a question bank. The question bank can be sent to you ahead of time. You go through the entire question bank and you sit for 4 hours. You can't consult any books, any notes, no nothing. And you'll have to answer 8 essays. Each essay has to be 300 words, and they give you some parameters. You'll have to quote these words. That option is also there. Just an exam. Within 4 hours, you'll get your certificate. That option is also there. I have myself, I wanted to experience it myself, and Guru Maharaj told me, you do it. So I myself sat and did a summative exam. And I found it a little difficult. So if you can do it through a course, it'll make things much easier because the exams are also broken into 5 different unit exams. You're also discussing with other practicing devotees. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti karna rasaya tatha. Srimad Bhagavatam informs us that everything comes to life when we are discussing in the association of like-minded devotees. So having a course is first of all good. Whether to do it through the local temple or some other, at this point in time, I would simply say, not in a position to say what you exactly should be doing, but I can simply say that the option is available. I will say that somehow or other just study. You cannot say there are so many schools in the city and that I will not put my child into any of the schools. Put somewhere, do something. It's your choice. Now, which choice you want to take, that you have to consult those who have been guiding you, who know you. You have to. They will be able to help you with that. But I must admit that the local centers themselves would need to be capable of conducting examinations. Now, you cannot just conduct a Bhakti Shastri examination. There's a whole procedure. There is a board of examination. In fact, Guru Maharaj and Atul Krishna Prabhu, who represents the board of examination. Atul Krishna Prabhu, in fact, he told me that every year you go to South India. This time, where are you going? Last year, I went to Srirangam and helped them come up to the board of examination standard of conducting Bhakti Shastri. There are whole various procedures, a lot of prerequisites. There are many things involved in that. It's not just doing. They will not give you permission to just conduct an exam. So I helped them do it. Atul Krishna Prabhu said, now you should start talking to other temple presidents in Jayapataka Maharaj's South Indian zone and make sure that all the temples become capable of conducting these exams. So I'm a little bit thinking about how to get that going. I'm planning to go to Rameshwaram this year, but it's in my mind. It is when Guru Maharaj sees me, he's definitely going to ask me a status report. And right now I have 0 in my status report. But if there are Iskcon centers within Guru Maharaj, Guru Maharaj right now is immediately thinking of his centers in South India. That's the first step. He wants all the centers, but there are more than 200 centers. So I'm also really puzzled how that can need to start with. Anyway, but that's another thing that we also want the local centers to do things. Yes, it is difficult to conduct Bhakti Shastri in your local center. It is difficult, but no pain, no gain. But it is worth it. I'm telling you, there are certain services within Iskcon which are absolutely non-controversial. Management is controversial. We all know that. The same devotee who does management service is considered despicable like Yamaraj. But when he is a teacher, he is considered so lovable like Shukadeva Goswami. There are certain services which are very attractive because they're fully Brahminical, Pujari services. So for deity paraphernalia, Kirtan, Bhajan Sandhya, studying Prabhupada's book, teaching Prabhupada's book. These things are absolutely Brahminical services. So it will be worth it for every Iskcon center to come up with its own set of teachers. The teachers should, the teachers will need to be serious in Krishna consciousness. They will need to be more serious than the students, verifiably more serious than the students. Yes, but we need to take the step forward. We need to take the step forward. Devotees have to have faith in Krishna's lotus feet. They need to have faith. Krishna will take care of me. We need both male devotees and female devotees. I have nothing against female empowerment or male empowerment. My only complaint is we need to ensure that there is celibacy and separation of gender. Apart from that, I don't have any issues about these kind of things. We require Prabhujis, Matajis, everyone to study through all these 4 levels. It is smaranam. You know how much your mind is completely thinking about Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastime. So to set up Bhakti Shastri at a local center, it involves a lot of austerities, we can say, technical, bureaucratic also, but it is worth it. It is worth it. The teachers will need to have something called at least you need to have something called the lead instructor. The lead instructor should have Bhakti Shastri degree. The lead instructor should have something called TTC1, TTC2, Bhakti Shastri TTC. Certain official requirements are there, but these things are worth. These are worth. So I will always say that the local centers also should conduct them. It is a very nice environment. It is very nice. This is the shiksha. We keep hearing about shiksha guru, shiksha disciple, shiksha. This is shiksha. Shiksha means shiksha. Somebody is helping you understand Krishna's instruction. Ultimately, we are all under Krishna's lotus. Gopi bhartu padakamalayyo dasa dasanudasa. So it is Krishna. So when somebody is transmitting Krishna's instruction in a transparent manner, that is shiksha. Here's another bit from the chat. I have problems remembering shlokas. I get very nervous. I wanted to do Bhakti Vaibhav by attendance only without taking exam, but this is not allowed. Yes, of course. Without taking exam. But Bhakti Vaibhav itself is meant to be exam only. We are thinking the other way. We are thinking within Iskcon how to have these exams without courses. We don't have courses without exams. It is actually exams what I was thinking about. Bhakti Shastri exam, Bhakti Vaibhav exam, Bhakti Vedanta exam, Bhakti Sarvabhauma exam. But many devotees, they cannot imagine doing an exam. And therefore, these courses are a bit like the coaching centers. It's worth it. These have repeatedly said that only when we study Prabhupada's books, we actually begin to understand what is Krishna consciousness. Many devotees at this, even at the entry level, even after completing Bhakti Shastri, they said, what to speak of Bhakti Vaibhav level. Bhakti Vaibhav level, many times they said, we never even understood what we got into. Memorizing shlokas and so on, there should be shloka drills. You should have, in the traditional system, there is a method by which you memorize shlokas. The teacher recites once, the students recite twice. Initially, you do it word by word, then line by line, then 2 lines at a time, and the full. So in that way, it's just auditory memory. You're just hearing it. Remember, just like people remember cinema songs, rock songs, simply because they've heard. So this also, you just hear, you get it. This is how the Vedas are actually taught, the 4 Vedas. Through memorization, through shloka drill, just a mechanical method. It will simply happen. You just have to subject yourself to a shloka drill and you'll be able to memorize verses. Not difficult. There are ways and means for all. Even for writing essays, we can train the students on how to write an essay. We need to teach them how to write an outline first. And make the students write outline. In fact, I'm going to conduct something called Bhakti Shastri assessment training workshop, in which I will take prayers by the personified Vedas and Pratika as the standard text that will be studied. And we will actually train, we will have them go through closed book assessment, open book assessment, verse memorization. The reason why I want that to be done is without such a training, at least for some students, they underperform in the first unit of Bhakti Shastri. Because that's the first time they're writing an essay. And in Bhakti Shastri, the final marks is an average of all the unit marks. So if we had something prior to Bhakti Shastri in which we had given them basic training, even if they underperformed in that, and until they come up to a sufficient standard, if they have come to that point, then they come to Bhakti Shastri, all of their units they'll be able to perform routinely. They would know how to handle it. And basically that is going to be reflected at higher levels. At level, Bhakti Vaibhav, at the 3rd level, Bhakti Vedanta and so on. It keeps our life busy. I'm not saying we should continuously do all these courses, but I'm saying that every 2 years or so, if you keep doing, it keeps our life busy. We have a good purpose to live a Krishna conscious life. In addition to spreading Krishna consciousness to others, just for ourselves, it will take a few years. And then we're qualified to help others. And overall, Iskcon will become more and more scripture-based, more and more Shastra based, which is very useful and nice. We have a mechanism by which we can self-check. We can check whether we are moving in the right track or in the wrong track. If we are not based on Shastra, then we have no means to understand whether we are progressing or regressing. All right, I'll stop with that.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for giving such a very nice understanding of what is Guru Maharaj's mode and why he is pushing so much about the Bhakti Shastri and relating it back to Prabhupada, that it is actually Prabhupada's mode. Prabhupada only gave these instructions which Guru Maharaj is propagating, pushing further. And you also gave a very nice example that how visionary he is. Like he was talking about congregation development 80s when nobody was believing it, and now we have a Iskcon based on congregation. And after that, you very nicely gave answers to the questions. I hope devotees are all very happy and very, I think, satisfied with the answers that Prabhuji has given. So we'd like to thank Prabhuji by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for Prabhuji once. Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram.
Thanks Prabhuji for coming, and I think there will definitely be more things that you might have to share. So maybe sometime in future again you can plan and give us your association.
ensure that Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma are studied. Because that I need to give numerical report to Guru Maharaj. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vaishnavyo Namo Namah. Maharaj ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai.